ITDC and the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, welcome you to the Sonne Lumiere at the Old Fort. Ishq-e Dilli is the story of the historic events of Delhi to this day. Please switch off your mobile phones. Commercial photography is prohibited here. Ladies and gentlemen, for your pleasure, may we present Ishq-e Dilli.
A mote of dust is tiny, but it tells the direction of mighty winds.
It is my destiny and my nature to flow with the eternal winds of time. I have seen its myriad faces in the journey of my life. Cities born of my womb lie buried in my heart. The hearty city of Delhi, an endless tale of uprooting and resurrection with its phoenix-like character. One came to plunder, another to settle down, but each one found an abode here. Delhi embraced them with open arms. History is a witness to these glorious love affairs, and the proof lies in the 10 cities whose stories were erased, and yet the saga continues. This is the essence of this love, the very fragrance of the universe. Present in the 7th city of time, the story I regale is the story of grace and music, politics and love, of kingdoms and saints. Lovers of different hues appeared. The beloved remained Delhi.
The twain shall never meet, but one is unimaginable without the other. Where there is earth, it will be engulfed by the sky. The speck of dust, witness to the antics of time, inscribed this fable of love in the book of his heart. And I, steady, stable, watched its next turn.
24 yards, 8 digits atop. Is seated the Sultan. Don't miss him, Chauhan.
Prithvi Raj Chauhan. The very first chapter opens on the name of this renowned warrior prince. After travelling through Rajasthan, Gujarat and eastern Punjab, when this Rajput prince from Ajmer placed his eyes on Delhi, he could not resist its manifold charms and made it his capital. What remains of this Rajput's glorious reign today is the fortress of Kila Rai Pithora near Ladosarai. Prithvi Raj Chauhan's bravery was renowned in the land. He was famous as the one whose arrows pierced words. To save Delhi from getting vanquished, he fought twice with the Turk Muhammad Ghori. The battlefield of Tarayan turned red with pools of blood. Chand Bardai, in his Prithvi Raj Raso, has sung of Chauhan's bravery in 1300 ballads. It is said that Ghori made Chauhan captive and blinded him. Chauhan, not to be outdone, used his word-piercing arrow to take Ghori's life. It is the fervour and imagination of Chand Bardai that weaves this tale, for I do know that Prithvi Raj fell in the bloody battle of Tarayan. The year was 1191 AD. Although Muhammad Ghori was able to conquer Delhi, he could not remain here. War in Iran was constantly under attack, and he had to hand over the reins of Delhi to his slave Qutubuddin Aibak and return to his own land. In a bizarre turn of events, Ghori died untimely, and his slave Qutubuddin Aibak happened to be the first Sultan of Delhi. The Turkish sultans would purchase slaves from the markets of Bukhara and Samarkand and train a select few in the art of combat and then grant them high titles. One such slave, Iltutmish, was blessed in his stars. Within 4 years, Qutbuddin Aibak passed away. Qutbuddin had married off his daughter with a slave of his. Qutb's slave, son-in-law and governor of Badayu, Shamsuddin Iltutmish, thus came to be the second Sultan of Delhi. The city, built by the Turks in 1206, is still known as Qutb Mehroli. The White Palace, Red Palace, Green Palace, the Mosque Qubatul Islam, madrasas and minars were the pride of this beautiful city. Indian masons and artisans embraced new artistic inputs and merged them effortlessly with traditional forms. The palaces and mosques are now reduced to ashes, but the 74-meter high tower of the Sufi saint Bakhtiyar Kaki stands tall even today. Hauz-e Shamsi, built by Iltutmish, kept the city quenched. In their reign of 85 years, the Turks made Delhi into a very big center of governance. Iltutmish's fame spread as far away as Punjab, Bengal and Multan. After the glorious era of King Harshvardhan, this was India's second sunrise.
The speck of dust was entrenched in these stories of time. Iltutmish was on his deathbed and worried about the future of his kingdom. Now what was to take place, the annals of history had perhaps never witnessed.
My sons are debauched, lost in youthful avarice, and not even one is fit to ascend the throne. Razia, my daughter, is most capable and wise. Razia shall be the Sultan upon my death.
Indeed, Razia Sultan ignored the Parda, learned the strategy of governance and sat on the throne of Delhi for 3 years. And then this star too faded away. The Hauz-e Shamsi of Iltutmish kept Qutb Mehroli well watered. But getting the hot stones of Aravali to produce water was a futile task. The increasing population in the 13th century then settled on the western banks of Yamuna, and thus came about Kaikobad's Kilokri. Today's Jangpura extension is the Kilokri of erstwhile times. The ravages of time have of course left no trace of its existence. My memoirs were so inscribed by Ziauddin Barni on the pages of Tarikh-e-Feroz Shahi. In this city was one passionate lover of Delhi, Tutiye-Hind, Hazrat Amir Khusro. If his poems spoke of the sultans, they also spoke of his undying love for Delhi. If they were given to questions of philosophy and thought, they were also redolent with youthful romance. The worldly and soulful poetry of Khusro flowed from the courts of the sultans to the dargah of Sheikh Nizamuddin, from the fort walls to the narrow alleys, and his words overflowed with his love for Delhi. Khusro spoke of his love in 5 languages: Persian, Khadi Boli, Braj, Avdhi and Punjabi Multani. A court poet with 5 sultans, the poetry of Khusro was born of the land which is a melting pot of 2 major cultures. It owes its existence neither to Hindui nor Persian, Braj or Avdhi, but is resonant of his own unique style. Born in Etah in the Doab, Khusro arrived in Delhi at the tender age of 8 years and now lies buried in her arms. However, he shall live in my heart till the end of time. I sometimes hear the winds hum the song of his love.
छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुँह से नैना मिलाए के। छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुँह से नैना मिलाए के। प्रेम बटिका मधुआ पिलाए के। प्रेम बटिका मधुआ पिलाए के। मतवारी कर दे रे मुँह से नैना मिलाए के। छाप तिलक सब छीनी रे मुँह से नैना 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 मिलाए के। खुसरो निजाम पे बलि बलि गए। खुसरो निजाम पे बलि बलि गए। मोहे सुहागन की नीरे मोसे नैना मिलाए के। मोहे सुहागन की नीरे मोसे नैना 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 मिलाए के।
Neither Alexander nor remain the Epitaph died. How vain lie nameless without name.
Time is fond of the twists of the game of chess, or perhaps it is the cyclic nature of the universe. What is born shall die, and what is dead shall be reborn. The time had signaled an end for the glory of Kaikobad's court. The Khalji chieftains conspired, and one day Kaikobad was found dead on the banks of the river Yamuna. And with this, the reign of the slave dynasty, which began with Qutbuddin Aibak in the hillocks of Aravali, came to an end on these very banks of river Yamuna. 1290 saw Jalaluddin Khalji, the traitor chieftain of Kaikobad, establish a new dynasty to rule over Delhi. As the days went by, the city flourished, the palace became more ostentatious, markets were established, the city was walled and named Shahre-Nau, or a new city. However, in this continuous saga of resurrection and doom, the story was to take another twist. Far away on the banks of the Ganga, near Kada Manikpur, Jalaluddin Khalji's nephew, Alauddin Khalji murdered him, lusting the throne of Delhi. It was raining heavily when he rode into the city gates, squandering coins of gold, and held the court not in Shehr-e-Nau but in Qutub Mehroli. Horse Khas was built and kept the city quenched. Kilokri was now a forgotten story. The dawn of the Khaljis was the dusk for Kilokri. War is a synonym for destruction, yet the city of Siri was born on a battlefield. A storm arose from the borders of China, engulfing Iran, Middle Asia and Russia. This was a tribe which under the aegis of Genghis Khan had laid claim on much of the territories of the old world. When Delhi was attacked, Alauddin Khalji removed his crown and put on his armor. He handed the keys of the harem and treasury to his general and set up a camp in the far-away flat grounds of Siri. An intense battle ensued and Alauddin Khalji emerged victorious. On these victory grounds was built a great two-story palace called Kasr-e-Hazar Sutun, which stood on 1,000 pillars. Gradually, Siri came into existence around it. The ruins of the 46 feet high wall of lime and stone, which defined the city of Siri, are still visible today near the Siri Fort Auditorium. Alauddin Khalji was not a fundamentalist and eluded the clutches of the priests. History may call him a tyrant, yet Sufi Sheikh Nasruddin Charag says that he had his own independent view. He reduced the salary of his forces when he went for battle against the Mongols. At the same time, he also reduced the prices of commodities. The markets of Delhi were flooded with goods for his subjects. After his death, the people of Delhi blessed him in their prayers and tied pious threads to his grave. This is now turned into a conviction that has been fostered by time and exists till date. It is a sign of Delhi's love that turned a tyrant into a saint in his death. His son Qutubuddin Khalji did ascend the throne, but like a guest. One day, one of his chieftains, Ghazi Malik, advised Qutubuddin to build a new city. He looked at him askance, gave a condescending smile, and said, "When you become a sultan, then you build your city." I do not know if it was a satire or time had prophesied through Khalji's words. Shortly, Khalji's slave Khusro Khan killed him. And the same Ghazi Malik took the identity of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq and ascended the throne. The city of Tughlaqabad arose in this ocean of cities like a perishable bubble and soon disappeared. Admittedly, at this time, there were two rulers of Delhi. One who ruled over the land and the other who ruled the hearts. Mehboob-e-Ilahi, Sultan-ul-Mashriq, Dastagir-e-Do-Jahan, the Sufi Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq began constructing his dream city of Tughlaqabad in an area of 6.5 miles, while far away from the city, Nizamuddin Aulia began to build a humble inn for the travelers. In order to build the city, Tughlaq ordered the removal of labor from working at the rest house. The labor, filled with love and respect for Aulia, decided to work for him at night. In retaliation, Tughlaq stopped the supply of oil for lighting the lamps. Prayers have power. Hazrat Nizamuddin used water instead of oil to light the lamps and cursed Tughlaq. Except for jackals and nomads, no one will ever stay in this city built by you. This is what Aulia had prophesied when Ghiyasuddin started to return after waging a war with the Mongols in Bengal. He found that Delhi was indeed far away. His son Muhammad Tughlaq, in honor of his arrival, erected a huge wooden pavilion. This structure fell on him like the cursed arm of time and crushed him to death. His tomb faces Tughlaqabad. At one time, there was a lake here and a bridge connected it to Tughlaqabad. Now is a road that joins Mehrauli to the village of Badarpur.
Whether you believe the curse of Aulia to be true or just a tall fantasy, the fact is that a dream city built on a war footing was reduced to ruins in merely 15 years. And even after 600 springs, millions celebrate at the mausoleum of Nizamuddin Aulia.
मोरे ख्वाजा जी मोरे ख्वाजा जी हो निजामुद्दीन औलिया हो निजामुद्दीन औलिया सूरत के बलिहारी निजाम तोरी सूरत के बलिहारी सूरत के बलिहारी निजाम तोरी सूरत के बलिहारी
The Sultan who left Delhi to make Daulatabad his seat of rule was Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He was his own persona. Call him eccentric or a philosopher, but the ideas he experimented were original and way ahead of his times. He once raised the taxes so high in the Ganga-Jamna plains that the farmers set their fields on fire and went into hiding in the forests. He then lured them back by giving loans from the royal treasury. Another time, he discontinued gold and silver coins and introduced copper coinage. Every household turned into a mint. International trade suffered. Finally, he issued a diktat to retrieve all the coins. The Moroccan traveller Ibn Battuta arrived in Tughlaq's court in 1334 and stayed on for 8 years. In his memoirs, he has written extensively of his time there. Tughlaq, however, could not find water in Daulatabad and began missing Delhi. He returned and established the city of Jahanpana. This city, spread from Siri to Qutb, was the biggest till now. Now, 3 interconnected cities existed: Jahanpana, the smaller Qutb, and the smallest, Siri. Neither the city nor the palace have survived. The scattered pages of this story are found in and around Begumpur, Haus Khas, Uday Park, Panchsheel Enclave, and Shahpur Jat. These places stand on the very land of Jahanpana. Every fan of cricket knows of the Firoz Shah Kotla grounds. The 6th city of time in which it is located was Firozabad, and the king who built it was Firoz Shah Tughlaq, the son of Muhammad Tughlaq's cousin Rajab and his Rajput wife from Dipalpur. He was so fond of architectural design and construction that he is often compared with Augustus Caesar. Far from the hills of Aravali, on the banks of the river Yamuna, a huge city was built. 18 villages formed the basis of this city. It had 30 palaces, 200 rest houses, 4 hospitals, 10 hammams, 150 wells, and 1200 gardens. This city spread itself over 5 miles from Kotla to Shikar Mahal. Shikar Mahal was where Hindu Rao Hospital stands today. Two Ashokan pillars were brought from the faraway cities of Ambala and Meerut. One was placed in the royal palace and the other in the Shikar Mahal. Public libraries, observatories for the study of stars, and the sundial for telling the time were erected. Mosques were built. Though you may not hear the call of Muezzin today, these have stood the test of time and can be seen in Khirki and Begumpur. Firoz Shah Tughlaq was a soft-hearted ruler. He reduced the tax of jizya levied on the Brahmins and got their texts translated into Persian. In 1368, when lightning struck the Qutub Minar, he had the top 2 minarets built again.
How very beautiful this city is. The pride of Delhi beneath the 7 magnificent skies. Ill-fated again, however, for it too will be destroyed.
It is a cold December night. The only thing that warms it is the fresh blood flowing on the streets. For 3 days and 3 nights, I witnessed Delhi's bloodbath. decimated bodies, plundered bazaars, frightened eyes that peeped through the crevices of closed doors, as though waiting for somebody to leave. On December 1398, when Taimur Lang left Delhi, his sword was stained with blood of countless lives, and my heart with scars that would never heal. Taimur rose like a storm from the mountains of Hindu Kush and attacked Delhi. The excuse was that the Delhi Sultanate was too soft-hearted towards their Hindu subjects, but the real intent was plunder. The flat grounds on which he set camp was what is now the Safdarjung Airport, and where the battle ensued, the people flying on that Aurobindo Marg cannot begin to imagine the gruesome scenes that I witnessed. Nasiruddin Mahmud Tughlaq used his soldiers, horses and elephants to combat Taimur. Elephants' tusks were laced with poison. In turn, Taimur placed haystacks on the backs of his camels and set them on fire. The scared camels ran towards the elephants, and the elephants ran amok onto their own army. In the midst of this chaos, Taimur proclaimed victory. Then followed the killings. Delhi was uprooted, and with it was uprooted the rule and dynasty of the Tughlaqs. Delhi was no longer the loved one. The Sayyids came by and then the Lodhis. A few mosques were built and some mausoleums, but the fervor of love was not the same as before. After a long wait of 130 years, which seemed endless, in 1526, the son of Sikandar Lodhi Ibrahim faced Babur, the descendant of Taimur, in the Battle of Panipat. Bullets flew and cannons roared to usher in the reign of the Mughals. Evening of 24th January 1556, as he was about to sit for his prayers, hearing the muezzin, his foot entangled in his costume, and he fell down the circular staircase of the Sher Mandal. Perhaps in the call of that muezzin was the final call of the Almighty. He died on 26 January 1556. Though named Humayun, or the Fortunate One, misfortune hounded him throughout his life. An attractive personality, but ineffective. Won over Gujarat, Malwa and Bengal, but remained an opium addict. Remained a refugee for most of his life and dealt with many blows. This was the final one. This old fort where you are seated now is neither Deepana nor Shergarh. It is a united adoration of these two lovers of Delhi.
The recorded history of the tales of the lovers of Delhi form the pages of the Book of Heart of the Speck of Dust. However, even before Delhi, Deenpana or Shergarh, there was always this pious land on the banks of the river Yamuna. Today's old fort and the land around it forms the backdrop for a grand epic written in 800 BC, which the world knows of as the Mahabharata. In the second of the 18 parts of the Mahabharata, the city of Indraprastha, depicted by Ved Vyas, is lost somewhere between here and the Nigambodh Ghats and this great mystery of the universe. When King Dhritarashtra portioned the land between the Kauravas and the Pandavas received the 5 villages of Tilpat, Bagpat, Panipat, Sonipat and Indrapat. The Pandavas, on the advice of Sri Krishna, decided to clear the forests of Indrapat or Indraprastha and make it their capital. They prayed to Agnidev for help. When the forests burned, a demoness ran out and sought shelter in the arms of Arjuna. This was Maya. Maya was entrusted with the responsibility of building Indraprastha. The palace that was built was illusionary, Kings, saints and gods arrived from far and near to look at it. Duryodhan, the Kaurav prince, also took a tour of the city with his uncle Shakuni and was entranced. But it did not take long for this to turn into envy. The palace had many attractions that created illusions and deluded the mind. Duryodhan too was misled. As he lifted his foot to cross the courtyard of the palace, he fell into a pond instead. The maids and Queen Draupadi, who were looking on, began to laugh at the spectacle. Feeling insulted, he left the palace in anger. His uncle Shakuni incited him to seek revenge and invited Dharmaraj Yudhishthir to play a game of dice. Yudhishthir lost all that he possessed and finally put his wife Draupadi at stake. Seeking revenge, Duryodhan proceeded to disrobe Draupadi in the royal court. Draupadi cried out to Sri Krishna for help, and he saved her from getting shamed in public. For 13 years after this, the Pandavas stayed in exile. On their return, began the greatest epic battle for the sake of Dharma, the Mahabharata. The battlefield of Mahabharat, Kurukshetra, is 200 miles from Delhi, and Speck of Dust is eager to narrate further.
After the death of Humayun, his son Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar made Agra his capital. During his reign, the Mughal Empire received a fresh impetus and scaled new heights of prosperity. He got the Mahabharata translated into the Persian, calling it the Razamnama. In 1643, son of Jahangir and grandson of Akbar, Shah Jahan built in the memory of his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, a mausoleum which is the seventh wonder of the world. Sculpted in white marble, a teardrop on the cheek of time, the Taj Mahal. When Shah Jahan fell in love for the second time, it was with Delhi. He built a colourful city from the Red Fort to the Fatehpuri Mosque and named it Shah Jahanabad.
If there be a heaven on this earth, it is here, it is here, it is here.
In the Red Fort, inscribed in liquid gold on the white marble of the Diwan-e-Khas are the words, "If there is paradise anywhere on earth, it is here, it is here, it is here." In the Naubat Khana, musicians play the rags which denote the hour of the day. The throne of the Badshah in the Diwan-e-Am is embellished with pearls and precious stones worth 86 million rupees. Two bejeweled peacocks, grasping rubies from Badkhasha in their beaks, spread their golden wings to form an umbrella atop the throne. The Red Fort, complete with its Rang Mahal, Mumtaz Mahal, Hammams, Tasbih Khana and Hayat Bakhsh Bagh, took 10 long years to be built.
Thy mercy is a great leveler, O Lord. All and sundry bow their heads in prayer.
The mosque with 3 domes, 3 umbrellas and 2 towers, built by 5,000 masons and sculptors, working night and day for 6 years, was the Jama Masjid. Relish the biryani, kebabs, sharbats, faluda and shirmal here. Watch magicians cast a spell on the streets or hear a dastan go weave tales of fantasy of Hatim Tai and Sindbad. Wish to your heart's content. Buy a lover for the lovesick, elixir of youth for old, and pink of health for the ailing. There is so much here that the wealth of Kuber falls short. Between this bazaar runs a canal in which you can see the reflection of the shops laden with untold goods. This is the 1520 meters long Chandni Chowk, built by Jahan Ara, the daughter of Jahangir. Many sultans came and many went after Aurangzeb. The numbers increased, but the power reduced. Meanwhile, the attacks on Delhi kept on rising.
Thy face is smeared with the dust of destruction. The plight of the heart is same as the plight of Delhi.
Nadir Shah of Iran, who came as a guest in 1739, plundered the city, stole the Peacock Throne and the Kohinoor from the Red Fort. When the attacks continued, the Maratha chiefs took Shah Alam under their custody. And that East India Company, whose William Hawkins, in the court of Jahangir, begged permission to trade with folded hands, barely 150 years later, in 1803, the same company's Lord Lake defeated the Mughal king and Daulat Rao Sindhia at Patparganj to take over the seat of Delhi.
The land of God, the Sultanate of the King, rule of the company, all and sundry are notified.
It was said that the Sultanate of Shah Alam extended merely from Delhi till nearby Palam. And by the time the last Mughal king Bahadur Shah Zafar ascended the throne, Delhi Sultanate was limited to the confines of the four walls of the Red Fort.
If the beauty of thy world had to be tainted every day, Zafar, weren't it better to have had no creation?
Zafar, a king by birth, was a poet in his heart. Urdu, the language of the elite, sophisticated, connoisseurs and poets, was born on the steps of the Jama Masjid and raised in Shahjahanabad. Poets like Mir Taqi Mir, Daag, Zauq, Momin and Ghalib passionately patronized this language of love and finesse. In spite of the swords of the Marathas or the cannons of the British, the Red Fort was alive with its mushairas. The last of the Delhi's mushairas was held in the court of Zafar. In 1857, a soldier named Mangal Pandey revolted in Barakpur, and by the time it reached Delhi, it became a full-fledged uprising. The soldiers in Meerut refused to bite on the cartridges greased with cow fat. The 85 soldiers who were sentenced to death were rescued by burning down the prisons. Rani Lakshmi Bai, Nana Sahib, Tatya Tope, Kumar Singh, Begum Hazrat Mahal were committed to fight until death. On reaching Delhi, the revolutionaries convinced Bahadur Shah to join the struggle. On his orders, cannoneer Bakat Khan upturned the cannons. It took the British army 5 days to reach the Red Fort from the Kashmiri Gate. Bahadur Shah took refuge in Humayun's tomb. The British resident imprisoned him a day later. He who had once commanded from the Red Fort faced a trial there.
Court stands adjourned till 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
He was sentenced to a life imprisonment and exiled to Rangoon. And there, in 1862, this last of the great Mughals passed away. After 200 years of Mughal reign was finally written off by the British, they turned the Red Fort into a cantonment and continued to rule from Calcutta. From the 1st of November 1858, Queen Victoria was in direct command of India. By December 1911, British rule was well established over most of India, and there were several problems in running it effectively from Calcutta. When Britain's newly crowned King George V and his Queen Mary arrived at the Bombay port, they were to board a 5-day train journey to Delhi. On 12th December 1911, the Delhi Darbar was held near the Kingsway camp in today's Santnagar. In the presence of the Viceroy and Lady Harding, a 5-mile-long parade reached the camp via Red Fort. A mini rail ran up to the gates of the camp. Bugles played and a 101 cannon salute was shot. Although the British had come to enslave India, they soon succumbed to the charms of Delhi. It was now their turn to make a new city, the 10th and the last, New Delhi. In 1912-1930, the duo entrusted with this task was Edward Lutyens and Herbert Baker. After a lot of rumination and arguments, it was at last decided that this symbol of British rule would adorn the Raisina Hills, south of Shahjahanabad. A mix of Western and Eastern cultures with balconies, umbrellas, domes, stupas and Grecian pillars. The Viceroy's palace in the center, the administrative offices on the sides. If a straight line were to be drawn from the old fort, it would cut through India Gate and end at the Viceroy's palace. The whole country was in revolt and the rulers in Delhi helpless. A population of 40 crores men and women had the sole desire in their heart, freedom. The efforts of Gandhi, Nehru, Gokhale, Patel, Tilak, Bose and Azad finally yielded results, and India earned her freedom on 15th August 1947.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
Jawaharlal Nehru became the first Prime Minister of an independent India, and the Indian tricolour unfurled from the Red Fort for the first time.
History too has been a witness to this truth. Moments had erred and centuries are paying the price.
To unfurl the Indian flag at the Red Fort, India had to pay a heavy price by losing its two arms of Bengal and Punjab. The Radcliffe Commission drew a few lines on the map and the country was divided. The country that saw the dawn of independence on the foundations of unity and brotherhood was now torn apart by the politics of religion and the bloody nights of massacre. the history of the world had never been a witness to so many homeless people. Refugee camps mushroomed for those who crossed the border into independent India and for those who went across. The old fort, living up to its name of Sheher-e-Deepanaah, gave shelter to 60,000 refugees. After balming the wounds of a bleeding Bengal, the messenger of peace, Bapu, arrived in Delhi. He vowed that he would stem the flow of Delhi's hot blood before he left for Punjab. But 30th January 1948 saw the body of this saint from Sabarmati riddled by the bullets of Nathuram Godse. This great soldier